The floor under Stage 3 was already buckling when Escarai told us nobody outside the combine had ever finished Stage 4. He said it the way you'd mention the weather. For legs, no eyes I could find, a voice that came out of vents along his collar ridge instead of a mouth. The tempering hall was his classroom and his instrument both. 300 meters of modular plating that could drop, tilt, flood, or catch fire in any combination the drill computer chose, and it chose based on us. Specifically, it chose based on fear. Velen biology reads vibration the way human biology reads light, and the plating under our boots was wired straight into Escarai sensorium. Every cadet who stepped onto that floor was, to him, broadcasting. The hall calibrates to your signature, he told the room on day 1. It will not break you with strength. It will break you with the shape of what you already fear. Then he'd shown us the record. 41 cadets through Stage 3, 6 through Stage 4, 0 through 5. I'd spent 11 years walking into buildings that were actively trying to kill me, so none of that landed the way he wanted it to. Tarek Voss went first that morning, a Dosalin engineer who could redesign a reactor core blindfolded, and the floor read him in about 4 seconds. Stage 1 was a tilt and a gap. He cleared it. Stage 2 threw smoke that wasn't smoke. Some particulate the Velen used because it scattered light wrong, made depth impossible to judge. He cleared that too, hands out, counting steps. Stage 3 dropped the temperature 40 degrees and put a 30-meter chasm where the floor had been a second earlier, spanned only by a beam that hadn't existed in the room's baseline schematic. Tarek stopped at the edge of it. Just stopped. And the beam, sensing his stop, narrowed. It is reading your hesitation as a confession, Escarai said from the gallery rail, not unkindly. The hall does not punish fear. It simply continues being exactly as frightening as you tell it to be. Tarek didn't finish. Nobody blamed him. He told me once that his worst memory was a bridge failure on his homeworld, and I understood then that the hall hadn't built that chasm at random. 3 more cadets went through that morning. A Pelikdrun woman, broad and confident, who folded at Stage 2 when the false smoke triggered something about a fire she'd survived as a juvenile. The hall doesn't ask, it just finds. A young Tovradi male who made it to Stage 3 and watched the beam narrow exactly like Tarek's had, because fear of falling turned out to be close enough to universal that the hall barely had to work for it. A second Dosalin who got through 3 on raw nerve and broke at 4, when the chamber filled with a silence so total his own species' innery organs misfired and told him he was already falling. I watched all of it from the cadet line, and somewhere in there I understood what this drill actually was. It wasn't testing competence. Competence was the entry fee. It was testing whether you could keep your nervous system quiet enough that the floor had nothing to grab onto. I'd had that training already, just not anywhere they'd think to look for it. When my name came up, Escarai said something to the proctor beside him that the translation feed rendered as control sample, meaning he expected nothing, meaning I was there to register baseline so they'd know what an unremarkable signature looked like before the real candidates ran. Stage 1, the tilt and the gap. I'd crossed worse on a ladder with a man over my shoulder. I didn't hurry and I didn't slow down, because both of those are information, and I'd learned a long time ago that a floor, any floor, anywhere, only does what your weight and your breathing tell it to do. Stage 2, the false smoke. I closed my eyes. On Earth, in a real fire, your eyes are a liability past a certain point. You read the room with your hand on the wall and your count of paces, and you trust the count more than the picture your eyes are inventing in the dark. I came out the far side 4 seconds slower than the fastest time on Escarai's record and not 1 degree more anxious than when I went in, because there was nothing in that smoke that a burning stairwell hadn't already shown me. Stage 3. The chasm opened and the beam appeared, narrower than the one Tarek had faced. Already, the hall was trying harder. I want to be clear about what happened next, because it isn't bravery, and I never let anyone call it that afterward. In my old job, there's a moment, every structure fire, where the building tells you it's about to fail, a groan in the joists, a particular kind of silence, smoke pulling backward into a doorway. Civilians run from that moment. We run toward it, because the worst place to be when a floor goes is anywhere except the spot where you understand exactly how it's going to go. So when the beam started narrowing under me, I didn't grip tighter or move faster. I stopped, crouched, and put my palm flat against the surface, the way you check a beam for heat before you trusted your weight to it. The beam stopped narrowing. I heard Escarai's vents shift pitch in the gallery, something I'd come to recognize over 3 weeks as the Velen equivalent of a held breath. The hall, it turned out, didn't know what to do with a body that wasn't broadcasting an escalating signal. It had been built on one assumption, that the correct response to danger is to want, very badly, for the danger to stop. Mine wasn't. I was reading the structure the way I'd read 1,000 failing structures, with the specific, boring attention of a man checking a load before he commits his weight to it, and there was no fear in that attention for the floor to amplify. I finished crossing at something close to a normal walking pace, and the beam held the whole way because I'd given it nothing to work with. Stage 4 was the dark and the false falling sensation that had ended the second dorsal. The chamber lights dropped to nothing, and something in the air pressure or the floor's microvibration convinced your inner ear you were in free fall. I'd trained for vertigo on ladders 40 meters up with smoke in my eyes. I dropped to my hands and knees the instant the floor moved wrong. Not panic, procedure, the same thing you do on a rig in high wind, and felt along the plating until my palms told me a truth my inner ear was lying about. It was level. Stone level. I stayed on all fours and crawled the remaining distance, slow, deliberate, checking each section before I trusted it, and somewhere in that crawl I heard the vents in the gallery change pitch again, twice, sharper. "Hold the drill," Escarai said. Not to me. To the proctor at the control board. I stopped where I was, palms flat on plating that felt solid and probably was, and waited. The lights came up. The chasm was gone. The hall was just a hall again, 300 meters of plain grey plating, and Escarai was already coming down the gallery stairs at a speed I hadn't seen from him before. "You were not afraid," he said. It wasn't a question, but it had the shape of one underneath. "I was paying attention," I said. "Those aren't the same thing." He stood over me, for legs, no visible eyes, vents working at a pace I now understood meant something close to agitation, and said the floor had no record of a signature like mine. Not absent. Not suppressed. Simply nothing there to read, the way a structure under no load registers no load, and a drill built entirely around amplifying fear had no instruction for amplifying a man checking his footing with the same flat attention he'd give a coffee maker. Stage 5 was built on the assumption that anyone who reached it would already be broadcasting terror strong enough for the hall to finish the work, he said. "I do not know what it does to a signature like yours. I am not currently interested in finding out inside my own training hall." I told him that on Earth, we don't run toward fires because we've stopped being afraid of them. We run toward them because somebody taught us, a long time ago, that the fire doesn't care what you feel about it, and your feelings about it are the only thing standing between you and getting it right. He didn't have a response to that. He just stood there a long moment, vents working, and then told the proctor to log the run as incomplete by design rather than failed, because the hall had run out of floor before it ran out of me. I never did find out what Stage 5 does. Tarek asked me once, later, half joking, whether I wanted to know. I told him no. Some structures you don't need to test to respect. You just walk them carefully, all the way through, and let the building keep its secrets.